just came back from the Art of Desire. So we did a live women's event in Hillsboro, Oregon, which was awesome. We had such a good time. And we are in 3 weeks going to be doing a couples event also in Hillsboro, which is kind of the Tuscany of America, rolling beautiful hills. And so we're going to be doing a strengthening your relationship event, which is a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Christy, what are those dates?
Starts on the 24th in the morning, but it starts early in the morning. So you want to be in town on the 23rd. Then the
Okay,
event
yeah,
is October 24th through 30th.
yep. Thursday, Friday, Saturday is the couples event. Then Sunday we have off, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is the enhancing sexual intimacy event. And you can come to both, make a week of it, or you can come to either if you want to just come for 3 days. So I love these events. We do one of these every year, and they are just a really good way to take a deep dive on your relationship and put aside the work and the kids and the distractions and have some really focused time to look at what are we doing as a couple, what's interfering with the level of emotional or sexual intimacy that we feel, how could we grow into better friends. So this is really, those of you who follow me, I really teach a developmental approach to intimacy. That is to say, love and intimacy is something we become more capable of as we grow, as we are willing to self-confront, repent, evolve, choose to love, something we'll be talking about today. And this is a deliberate process. And the more we can understand our role in our troubles, the more freed up we are to actually grow into someone more capable of an intimate marriage. So it's not a pathology frame, it's really a growth frame. And so I think people find some relief in the idea that I'm not broken, abnormal. Other people struggle in similar ways because you think about the project of marriage, it's not an easy task to put two different people together and say, feel attracted and love for one another at all times, go. It just is not going to happen. And so it helps to stop pathologizing it and to start learning about what the project of love and choosing is really about and how you can become better at it. So we are offering to people on the live $100 off coupon that is just live, I think is the coupon code LIVE for $100 off any of the retreat tickets. We also have the men's event, so we just finished up Art of Desire, which is the women's self and sexual development course. And we're doing a men's course called The Art of Loving that is in Southern Utah, in St. George. And that's November
November 7th through the
Okay,
9th. Yeah.
7th to the 9th. And again, awesome event. I think a lot of times men are like, wait, what? Like, show up for a retreat? That's not something guys do. But the men are amazing every time. It's just one of my favorite events because you see such good, earnest men trying to be better partners, husbands, people. And so it's also addressing a lot of the false traditions we've received around sexuality that men have received, around what it is to be a good partner, a good friend, a good spouse. So, and really the question of how do I love better? How do I love with my sexuality better? So awesome event.
Two things. First
Sure.
is as you've been working on finishing up your book, we have not scheduled any events really for 2025 yet. That's not to say they won't happen. So I just wanted to let people know that if they want to come to a live event, these are
Yeah.
the only ones on the calendar for now. And it would be a good
Yeah.
idea to come
Yeah.
because real change happens. You could have a year more, 9 months more of this good progress by coming now versus waiting until we get another one on the calendar.
Yeah.
And then just something I
Exactly.
wondered if you could speak to, because I get this question in the inbox a lot, and I have a perfectly wonderful answer, but I would love for you to answer it. People are often in real crisis and wondering if this event would be helpful to them. And there's been infidelity, they're on the brink of divorce. Like, what would you say to those couples who aren't even sure if they're going to be married in 3 months? Should they still come?
Well, of course, every individual kind of has to figure out where they want to put their resources of energy and time, and only they can know in their specific circumstances. But what the course is not necessarily a course that's trying to get you to be or stay married per se. It's really a course about how to grow in your capacity to be a more loving person and to see more wisely, both into your relationship, into your spouse, into yourself. A lot of times we're so locked in our ideas about who we are and what other people owe us or don't owe us that we can't actually understand our situation well enough to be able to solve it. And so I'm really interested in people's personal growth, which helps people be better partners. It also has helped some people to get divorced with a deeper sense of peace and clarity that this is the best path of all of their difficult options. So it is definitely going to help you have deeper clarity. I've had some people who come and say, there was somebody at the Art of Desire event who coming into the event was thinking divorce was what was likely, and she left thinking, I think I can see myself in this marriage better and I have some work to do. So, that's sometimes what happens is people come in and say, like, you know what, we've got something to hope for. I've had other people who, through the process, could see their situation more clearly and better understood that the marriage was not going to make it. So I think, you know, it's going to help you have the clarity that you may be needing.
Thank you. That's great. I was thinking the other day when someone was asking about taking the online course by themselves, which I think is very a helpful thing to do. I don't know that my husband has ever gone through that course with me. I love that course so much, and I was just realizing like, oh yeah, I have, not that he's not willing. We just haven't sat down and done it together, and
Yeah.
that course has changed so much for me. And I think any couple, like you were saying, that comes to the retreat will come away a more solid person, which will help them work out things in their marriage or move forward
Yeah,
with more clarity. So thank you.
definitely. And as we'll talk about today, as you grow, you evoke different responses from your partner because you're engaging in the marriage in a stronger way, in a clearer way. And so, yes, it's always good when two people are taking a course, of course, because it helps each person to kind of strive for their own personal clarity. But who you're in relationship with deeply shapes how you even relate to yourself and how you see and understand yourself. And so, even one person is going to help a marriage get clearer, um, even if only one's doing it. Okay, so welcome everybody. This particular format means that all I can see is Christy. So I'm just going to be teaching Christy about loneliness. uh, but okay, let me just pull up my questions here so I can see them. Great. So I'm just going to jump in with one of the questions. Sometimes I start by teaching first, but I'm just going to use this as a launching place, this question. This person asks, is loneliness in marriage inevitable, even in the best of marriages? In which case, should we all prepare to be better at tolerating loneliness rather than assuming loneliness equates to a flawed marriage? Yes and no. I'm going to explain. So first of all, I think there's a difference between aloneness and loneliness. Aloneness is, yes, you're going to have aloneness in a marriage no matter what. Loneliness is this feeling that you cannot be in connection, that you want connection, that you can't have, that you can't create or find. And that's a much more difficult emotion, loneliness. And I don't know that everybody experiences loneliness in marriage. Everyone experiences at least aloneness. And so aloneness is paradoxically your ability to tolerate aloneness is directly proportional to your capacity for intimacy. And that may sound paradoxical or like that those two things shouldn't go together. I currently can't remember the name of the researcher. There was a Harvard researcher who did some research on this idea, and I can't think of her name right now. But basically, aloneness, to tolerate aloneness, is the ability to self-regulate, to be at peace in our own skin, to be alone with our thoughts, to know ourselves, to know our own minds, to be able to regulate our own emotions. The ability to tolerate aloneness is highly connected to how differentiated we are. And if we can't be at peace in our own skin, if we can't know our own thoughts and minds, if we can't, to use psychological speak, regulate our own functioning, right, autonomously from other people, we will suck the life out of the people we're in relationship with. And we will do that through needing to be needed, through trying to get them to love us, to affirm us, to tell us we're okay, to do things the right way, quote unquote, to do things in a way that makes us feel safe, that makes us feel in control. And so if we can't manage our own functioning, we will basically use other people in some form to manage that functioning. And this includes even, I'll be in a marriage, but I'm not going to choose you. I'm not going to invest in you. Like, I want the security of a marriage. I want the auspices of a marriage, but I'm going to keep myself at arm's length, because to know you is to feel dysregulated. And so when we're not able to tolerate aloneness, actually, or another way to say it is, if we can't tolerate, if we're not able to regulate our own sense of self when we're close to another person, because if we know what they want, we feel controlled. If we know what they think, we feel invalidated, then we're going to always be at arm's length in our relationships. So this ability to have an intimate relationship is connected to your ability to handle yourself when you're not getting what you want. And how solid your sense of self is, how able you are to manage your own sense of peace with yourself, to be able to settle yourself down when you're disappointed. That's going to get quickly revealed in a marriage. And the proverbial idea is that you have the honeymoon of attraction and infatuation and so on, but when that dissipates, because the disappointments start to emerge, the places of disconnection start to emerge, the disillusionment people confront is really often about the idea, wait, I thought you were going to be here for me and reassure me in all these ways, and you're not doing it, and you're not giving me what I want. And that's usually where the struggle happens, where people start hammering on the other person to get them to do what makes you feel comfortable with yourself, which is very different than the project of loving another person and caring for another person, when we're trying to get them to be what makes us comfortable. So as I talk about we just recently updated the Strengthening Your Relationship course, the kind of central thesis of the course is how you handle yourself when you're not getting what you want determines the marriage. And so learning to handle ourselves when we're disappointed. That doesn't mean we go silent, that we don't talk about anything, that we don't bring up anything, just to be clear. But we're not going into our losing strategies of micromanaging, critiquing, or distancing because we can't handle the fact that we're being disappointed. It's learning how to handle ourselves and stay productive and collaborative, and to still care about the other person even when they're screwing up. I'm just kidding, but even when they're disappointing us, right? So the next question that came in, that's kind of, the next sequential idea is, this person writes, it seems like a lot of couples have pretty unreasonable expectations around what they expect from each other as far as emotional fulfillment, which leads to a lot of discontentment. Being enmeshed feels very connecting. As we try to mature out of this fusion with our partners, it feels really lonely. As we mature out of enmeshment, what are reasonable expectations for your partner as far as emotional connection? So what I would just say first is, yes, enmeshment is kind of in the immediate sense reassuring, because it feels like closeness. We like the same things. We want the same things. We validate each other easily and readily. But enmeshment limits how intimate the marriage can be and how free the marriage feels, because it feels distressing if you reveal that you believe or think something different than what your partner thinks or feels, that you maybe want something different than what your partner thinks or feels. You manage your anxiety by managing your partner's anxiety or your parents' anxiety, right? So if you're enmeshed, you feel kind of like, I've got to have a sense of harmony with this person, at the expense of what is true, what is honest, or developing myself in my own unique way. And so if we have to all be the same for people to be happy, for people to not be distressed, it limits how honest of a relationship it can be, and therefore it limits how much the relationship can grow. And so I just want to go back to the question. It says, as we mature out of this fusion, it can feel really lonely. Um, Let me just speak to that. It can feel lonely, but only if you are not learning how to tolerate aloneness. And um, I talked about this. I don't think I told this story again. Christy, you'll know better than me because you edited the whole course. Did I tell the story again in the updated course of when I slept in the guest room?
Yeah, you did.
I did. Okay. Okay. It's a good one. I guess it gets a lot of people to react to it. But um, so just one of the stories, just really quickly, is basically I was disappointed by John, not wanting, he's on the phone with my brother. I'm trying to think how to tell the story so quickly so I can just get to the point. I, I basically was disappointed in John's lame choice. And I wanted to handle it through punishing him, right? Through anger, through, basically judging his decision to stay in a phone conversation that was going too late. And instead, because I had all this time that he was on the phone to confront myself, and of course I was teaching these things, so I'm like, I have to live by these stupid principles, that I was calming myself down and trying to self-regulate rather than go into the losing strategy of punishment, which was a way to sort of feel better in the immediate sense and drive more of the enmeshment. Because if I had done the punishing thing, there's, a decent chance that John would have been dysregulated by my punishment and possibly gotten off the phone to just manage that I was mad at him. But then kind of keeping a kind of psychological entanglement. And because I was pushing myself to grow up and stop being such a baby, I was staying honest, but not letting myself punish. And so, I said, this is just the fast version. To get the long version of the story, you have to be in the course. But I just said something to the effect of, I just don't want to wait anymore. And so I'm going to go sleep in the guest room. And I said, I'm really disappointed. I was really wanting to be with you tonight, but like, I'm just going to go into the guest room so I can sleep, because we were in our bedroom and John was on the phone still, and it was keeping me awake, keeping me from going to sleep. So when I went into the guest room, I was confronted with this feeling of loneliness slash aloneness. And that is, my heart was kind of sinking into, I don't feel chosen. I feel disappointed. I felt dysregulated by it. My heart kind of wanted to go into the poor me, right? This person isn't being what I want. And this question of, am I really lovable? Am I really desired? The truth was, there wasn't data for that. I knew that I was loved if I was being honest with myself. I knew I was desired if I was being honest with myself. And I know that's not the case for everybody. And so I'm not saying that that's true for everyone. But I knew that I didn't want to hold on to myself and soothe myself. I wanted to just be comforted by the enmeshment. I just wanted the immediate sense of control. But because I could say to myself, like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be somebody who extracts love because she can't handle herself. And so my goal right now is to just calm my disappointed heart, settle down, and be kind to myself, be kind to John, even though John's not even here. Just settle down and hold on to myself. Well, I would say, like, I actually fell asleep rather quickly because, instead of getting spun up into my anger, which would be an easy thing to have done, I was confronting myself and pushing myself to be the self I could respect. And so while it was still not what I wanted, like if I'd had what I wanted, John would have gotten off the phone on his own volition and I would have been able to be with him. But instead, I was being a person I could respect enough to just be calm enough to just fall asleep. And so I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. Okay. I was tolerating aloneness in a way that was actually facilitating a better relationship. Because I am convinced that if hatred had been emanating from the guest room, which it could have been. Like I'm fully capable of doing that kind of stupid stuff. Okay. Um, I'm telling you, my husband would have felt it. He would have felt it in the way I said I was going to sleep in the guest room. He would have felt it in the way I left. He would have probably felt it coming out of the guest room closed door. Okay. Because I think because he could feel that I was dishonest, I was disappointed, but I was just going to go do something that I felt better about, which is go sleep in another room so I could go to sleep. The next morning he came in immediately and he just said, "Hey, I'm really sorry. That was really dumb of me." Okay. If I had been dysregulated and angry, even if he'd come in, he would have felt my anger. He would have been then probably choosing between placating me or leaving for work so he didn't have to deal with me, neither of which would have felt good to me. They might have given me some sense of control and self-righteous anger, but they weren't going to make me feel connected. It was the fact that I self-regulated that I felt more able to be connected, that he felt able to be with me, that he felt able to actually apologize genuinely because he wasn't doing to manage me. He was just doing it maybe just to manage his own sense of, I didn't choose the better part. Okay. So, so then, I was remember saying something like, it's okay. Like, we'll just try again tonight. Like, and, as we did. So it was like not, it's a kind of handling of disappointment that facilitates togetherness. When we feel we have to be what the other person wants, we have to yield to them to manage their anger, right? Or we've got to pressure them to get them to do what makes us feel okay. We don't actually feel chosen. We don't feel loved. We don't feel desired. We don't feel the security that we want so much in marriage. And so we feel lonely even if we get control sometimes, even if we get our spouse. If you're the higher desire person and you're pressuring and you get your lower desire spouse to kind of concede and have sex with you or whatever, or whatever it is, go to the movies with you, you still don't feel chosen. You just feel managed or placated or, tolerated on some level. And so, again, the thing we most want in marriage is to feel cherished and chosen, but we don't have direct control over that. We have control over how choosable we are. We have control over how we handle our sense of aloneness, but we don't have control over whether or not somebody invests in us and and chooses us. And so that's a hard thing because it matters. And some of these questions that I'll get to are about a situation which you may not really have control over whether or not your partner is either capable of choosing you or willing to choose you. And there aren't easy answers for that, right? This is not the course on how to get the control you want in your marriage. That's just not, it's just more expensive. I'm just kidding. There is no course for that. And anybody trying to sell you that idea is selling you a fantasy. A lot of these books that are out there on, femininity and masculinity, in my view, are books about how to kind of get your partner to give you the response you want. And of course, who we are does impact our partner. It does shape who they are. But when it's a manipulation and trying to get the control we all want in our relationships, it doesn't actually turn into intimacy. It's either some version of control or psychological enmeshment that goes on and keeps us from having the sense of freedom and security that we really long for in an intimate marriage. Okay. Um, Christy, just because I've got my questions up and I can't see, just jump in if
Someone
at any
followed
point.
up on that story with my
Oh yeah,
wife.
please.
Yeah, my wife sometimes withholds affection when she's upset with me. I feel so lonely when she does this, and she doesn't mean to do it, but she was married before and she did that with her ex-husband. I don't know what to do, and it keeps happening.
Okay, can you give it to me one more time? So my wife withholds affection when she's disappointed with me. Can you read it one more time to me?
I feel lonely when she does this, and she doesn't mean to do it, but she was married before and did it with her ex-husband. I don't know what to do, and it keeps happening.
So when you say she doesn't mean to do it, I think what you're saying is she's not like scheming to do it. She just does it as a kind of response to being disappointed. And and it's kind of her way of trying to put herself back together. This is what I very much wanted to do in this moment that John was disappointing me, is make him pay for it because that would more likely elicit the response, a response of kind of deferring to what I wanted. and give me a sense of a hit of self-righteous superiority. All wonderful things. But of course, it doesn't lead to a better relationship, doesn't lead to a freer relationship. And I think what I would say to the person asking that question is just being able to self-regulate enough to speak honestly to your spouse about it and tolerate probably more disappointment and more punishment if you speak honestly. So the goal isn't about getting her to not punish per se. It's about being able to tolerate uh, your own aloneness that's going to be required to address this relationship honestly. Does that make sense? So it's going to mean saying, I feel your punishment when I disappoint you, and it's painful for me. It's hard for me. I love you. I don't like the idea of disappointing you, but the way that you handle it is really difficult because I feel either the desire to get away from you or to placate you, and I don't think this is a great approach to this isn't working out well for us. And I don't know how this person's spouse would respond to that, but that's tolerating going out. Whenever we're honest, if we're going to move out of enmeshment, we are going to handle more aloneness because we have to basically say what we think that isn't going to be validated immediately by our partner. Because if it were validated, we would be saying it comfortably. To actually grow the marriage up, it means going and saying something that only you alone can validate. And so, again, it means handling the dysregulation between you and handling it within yourself if the marriage is going to accommodate more truth. Okay, let me go back to the questions because they keep kind of pulling us through the concepts here. All right, let's see. This person says, I need to learn to step back and let my spouse choose who he wants to be in our relationship and how he wants to show up. I find myself getting demanding when he isn't loving me the way I want to be loved, or I take all the responsibility and blame it on my own immaturities and limitations for not feeling loved. Okay, so that's a good example of how we can do both things. Both are attempts at control. I mean, and both are versions of dependency. Okay, so I'm either going to basically pressure you, critique you, tell you who to be, or I'm going to basically say, you know what, if I just did A, B, and C differently, then I would get the marriage I want. But both are regressed minds' attempts to get control in a situation. And so both that desire for control distorts our ability to see clearly. I've heard you talk about that as we get more clear in our relationship with ourselves, it will resolve the question of where we're too demanding and needy and resolve the question of where we're not demanding enough. You've said that this doesn't mean we have to be right about everything in the conversation we have when we're talking to our spouse about where we feel disappointed, but that we need to be in deeper harmony with ourselves. I'd like to hear more of your thoughts about this as I don't quite grasp the meaning of what you're saying. Um, so hang on, let me just see what my notes are here really quickly. Okay. Uh, so let me go back to this person. You said that this doesn't mean we have to be right about everything in the conversations we have when we're talking to our spouse about where we're disappointed, but that we need to be in deeper harmony with ourselves. What I guess I would encourage you to be thinking about is what am I doing when I'm getting disappointed and what can I already see as immature in it? Like I'm trying to micromanage, critique, be in a lens of judgment, or I'm trying to say, you know, everything's my problem. And if I would just solve this, he would love me. And I think you're saying, I know that those things are wrong. I know that both of those things are immature. And so it means pushing yourself on those things. Don't go into my one-up critique when I talk about this. Don't go into the, I know I'm the problem here, everything's my problem either. Like, push myself to either be more honest with myself around what I believe is in fact my role and what isn't, and be in a conversation that's sincere around that without going into critique or critique of my spouse or just self-judgment. So what I mean by this is it means dealing with what you already understand about yourself and letting that shape your behavior. That's what's going to give the relationship more clarity. It is so easy to go into the behaviors that gratify us when we feel dysregulated. I talk in the book that I'm finishing up around stages of development. And if you've listened to some of these Facebook Lives or you've taken the online courses, you hear about these stages of development. Even if we hang out in stage 3 for a lot of the time in our lives, if we're fortunate enough to be there where we're more capable of intimacy and investment in another person, in a moment of conflict, we can be right down in stage 1 really quick and be ready to either take responsibility for everything or take responsibility for nothing, and both of which are stage 1 behaviors. So this is just, it's very, very easy to do this when we're dysregulated, but it's seeing it and not letting ourselves get away with it, not letting ourselves indulge the regressed behavior, because then it shapes our relationship in negative ways. It undermines how much intimacy the marriage can handle. And so, it's pushing yourself. So much of what I'm teaching in the relationship courses is how to see yourself clearly and to confront and regulate yourself around conflict, around differences, around disappointment, because it accrues to your strength and the strength in the marriage. Because when you can manage yourself, even in your disappointment, you have made yourself a much more desirable and easier person to be with. Like kindest, this is something Dr. Schnarch used to say, the kindest thing we can do for the people we love is learn how to handle ourselves when we're, I don't think he said when we're disappointed, but learning how to handle ourselves, and especially when we're disappointed. And so, as we are able to do that, we actually build the bond. This is what's so interesting is giving people exercises to self-soothe and calm themselves. The couple starts to feel closer to each other. When they are trying to regulate through the other person, then they feel more distanced, even if things look harmonious on the surface. So it's like a paradoxical thing. The more deeply we settle into our own skin, that we don't punish or take responsibility for everything, the more able we are to really be friends with another person. Okay. This person says, I've been married 10 years. We have 2 young kids, and it's been full of ups and downs. I know my husband loves me, but a common problem throughout my marriage is feeling unseen, unliked, and having little emotional connection with my spouse. We recently had a discussion about what we want and expect out of marriage. I so deeply want a strong emotional connection and to feel cherished. I learned that he thinks the main point of marriage is to raise children, and he doesn't really believe that a romantic marriage where 2 people genuinely like each other their entire lives is realistic. He hasn't had the best example from his parents or grandparents. I've considered divorce, but now that we have kids involved, I don't think it would be wise. He is a good man and a great father, but I've started to lose hope in ever having my emotional needs met in my marriage. When I tell him that I want what I want or need in regards to emotional connection, he's pretty dismissive, and I now think it's because he genuinely doesn't believe it's attainable. I'm not so sure about that. I'll come back to that. He thinks I'm hoping for a fake fairy tale marriage. What can I do in this marriage to feel a strong emotional connection to my husband when his efforts in this area are non-existent? So, okay, there's often so much to say, and it's hard to make it all coherent in a quick Facebook Live. But first of all, what I think is probably true that I can feel in this question is that you, the wife, are more the pursuer for a kind of emotional connection, and he feels your longing for that. And so he can be passive about it because he has the reassurance that you are in pursuit of him, just like somebody who's the higher desire person for a sexual connection, that as they're in pursuit from the lower desire person for a sexual connection, it's reassuring the lower desire person that they don't need to invest or do anything differently. And so, it's very easy to take advantage of the control that you have when you are the lower desire partner for anything. And your spouse, I think it's easy to say, I don't believe in a romantic marriage when you're trying to get something from him because it reassures him and gives him a sense of pseudo power, which is often the case for the lower desire. Let's say the stereotype in the reverse direction of a lower desire wife. Often she can be lower desire in part because he's in pursuit. And so she feels reassured that she is desired without having to have the exposure of deeper investment into the sexual relationship. Just like I think this husband doesn't want deeper investment emotionally. But let me just speak to this experience from the side of being the person who does not feel invested in, whether that's sexually or emotionally. It's brutal. It is really, really painful to be in a marriage in which you are taken for granted, in which you are not chosen, in which you are not valued. It's very hard to feel like this person is sharing a life with me, but doesn't see me, doesn't feel grateful to have me, doesn't choose me, doesn't, and this is connected to sexual desire. I mean, a lot of times we put this into the idea of, oh, he just wants to have sex. Okay. What most higher desire people are longing for is the sense of being cherished, of being desired, of being, that you find me attractive, that you want to be close to me. And so this wife is speaking to this emotional experience. I just feel like I feel unseen, I feel unliked. That when I bring up that I feel lonely, you say like, oh yeah, it's just not realistic. That's a form of taking advantage, and I think taking advantage of another person while you're sharing a life with them. I think it's a really indecent way to be in a marriage, although a very human way of doing it. Because to be invested is to be exposed, um, which is different than in pursuit, because in pursuit isn't as exposed as it may look. But I'm just going to put that aside for a minute and just say to be invested is to be exposed. To I think when you say, I choose this person, I choose to marry this person through thick and thin, through, I can't remember the standard promise that people make at marriage, non-LDS marriages, but to have and to hold and to cherish and goodness and strength and in health or illness and health. Basically, I'm here for you. Like I'm committing to really bring my best to you. And so, yeah, your spouse is going to disappoint you because you married somebody that's a lot different than you, who wants different things. And there's nothing more human than responding to that with critique, with being closed off, with anger, with a desire to change them, all very human things, but they're not love. Because to love is to like look at the person properly and to see the beauty that is in that other soul, to see the good that's there and to highlight it and to acknowledge it and to recognize it. You know, it's just like even how we choose to live life. We can live life from a frame of what we think we're owed, although it's a fantasy. It's just not true. I mean, to live is to suffer. Okay. I mean, we have so much good. We are so fortunate compared to all of the history of humanity. Every single one of us on this call are ridiculously fortunate compared to most of humanity. And most of us don't live in that acknowledgement. I mean, we're not sitting around receiving the good that we have and cherishing it and valuing it and acknowledging what it could be otherwise. And so we live in a kind of, we're living in a kind of entitled way that destroys happiness, destroys joy. Well, we do this very, very easily in marriage. And if you think about like who among us wants to feel taken for granted, wants to feel that the good things we do are just that we should be doing them, that they're just a given. It's what a good wife should do. It's what a good husband ought to do. When we live in a culture in which we can quickly like compare in this very false way because of social media, because of just our ability to be exposed to millions of other people. Of course, people can do this through porn, but they can just do it through, social media porn, like just the whole idea that there's all these much more successful, happier people out there. And when we live in that comparative way of, of seeing, we don't actually choose our partner. We don't actually say, you are my person. I'm going to love you really well. And so yeah, so this person is speaking to the pain of feeling like I'm with somebody who doesn't really cherish me and doesn't have any interest in doing it and wants to justify not doing it. Um, so, I don't have an easy or a quick answer to how one handles that because it is, so there's two different ideas. One is, I was working with a couple recently where he's been the pursuer, but I would not argue that he's a cherisher either. I think he wants to be cherished, which is different than he cherishes. My sense in this particular example is that you are more in pursuit, but not in a kind of hostile way, where this couple, I think he's had a lot more critique and anger about the love he can't get. Um, so I think we have to look at sort of a little bit separately from this question is if I don't feel cherished and I don't feel chosen, even if I'm the higher desire person for emotional connection or sexual connection, have I really chosen this person or am I just angry about the love that I don't get? That I don't feel seen or acknowledged, but I don't really want to know and love them. Because these are two different things, right? Like, are you ever going to love me? I want you to love me. I want you to have a sexual relationship with me. That's not the same thing as I care about you as a person. And sometimes the lower desire person is lower desire because they track that and they don't just want to kind of justify your one-up critique by stepping in. And so it's easy to stay low desire in that dynamic. Or you could be in the painful situation where you really do cherish this person and you really do choose them and you really do value them and you really want to know them, but they just don't want to reinvest and they just won't do it, even though you've spoken honestly about it. Then you're in the difficult situation of figuring out what is the most right thing for me to do when this person is basically saying, no, thank you. I don't want this kind of marriage. Um, Sometimes making that explicit helps that I understand that you don't want this kind of marriage. I would say even in this situation, to just make it explicit, like, okay, I will take no for an answer. I understand you don't want it. We'll continue to raise the kids, but I'm not going to keep trying to get a certain kind of connection from you that you don't want to have with me. I will let it go and stop trying to make this relationship special when you're saying you don't want it to be, because it's either going to call his bluff on this, okay, that it's really just because he's dependent on you doing it, um, or it at least will, if it's coming from an honest place and you relieve you from trying to make it something that it's never going to be and can't be, and can allow you to figure out, what the right thing to do is for you in that situation. I'm not saying, I wish I could tell people, look, just differentiate and the pain goes away. It's not true. I mean, we can grow and mature and we can make choices that we have more peace with, but we may have to suffer loss, right? Life is going to ask a lot of us. It does ask a lot of us. Um, but the best we can do is know that we've done it from our most honest selves and from a self we can respect, and that we're making choices that we can live with, even if they are a disappointment ultimately. But nothing pressures the question of who our spouse will be faster than us stepping into a stronger self. That's what pushes the other one to grow up if they are going to do it. This person says, my marriage is okay. My spouse is a good person. I like them, but there's no passion or deep connection in our relationship. There's comfort, there's security, there's goodness, but not this beautiful, deep, sustaining relationship that I think all of us aspire to have. It's all right. We're trotting along in life, but I don't think either of us is just delighted by the other person or can't wait to see the other person, things like that. The idea of having that kind of relationship is very appealing to me, but we've been married for a long time and have built a life together. I don't think either of us is tempted to leave. I think we both realize it could be a lot worse, especially at our age. It seems unlikely that we would have any better luck trying again with someone else. But how can we inject our relationship with life that was never really there to begin with? That's important right there. I would like to understand that better. I don't think we've lost anything that we could reignite. I just think it was never really there. We are two good people. Can any two good people create a passionate, thriving marriage together, do you think? This is a very, very good question. And I actually had a long discussion with my husband about that question this morning because I was just curious what he thought about that. Because, I'm not sure that I believe any two good people can create a passionate, thriving marriage, even though I wish that were not true. I would love it if even in arranged marriages, anybody could do what would create a thriving, passionate marriage. I work with a lot of people that have um, have that in the beginning. They have a spark. There's something special, even if it gets kind of covered up by resentment and entitlement and disappointments really quickly. There is that initial draw. Um, that's, I think, important. I think there's something about attraction that has a biological element to it that is quite flexible. I'm not saying there's nothing you can do, but I do think there is something to my question would be, why did you guys get married then? What was your goal in getting married? Because selecting down and saying you are the one is quite a process. And so what drove you to this choice? And are you forgetting about your initial attraction? I work with a couple that's been in a sexless marriage for years, but there was initial attraction, even though it only lasted for like the 2 months leading up to the point that they got married. But I still believe they have the core of that reality, even though they have handled their disappointments through a lot of control and passive aggression. So let me just say this. There's only one way to find out. And I think it's the question of, can I really choose this person? They probably haven't chosen you and you haven't chosen them. I mean, and what I mean by choosing is, can I like basically say, I'm going to cherish this human being. I'm going to love her or him. I'm going to value them. I'm going to stop thinking about the life I could have elsewhere. I'm going to bring my freaking best to this person. I'm going to think about what they like, what they value, what they like to do. And I want to do it more with them, not because I need to like to ski or whatever the thing is, but because I choose to be their friend and I'm going to be a better friend to them. And this is a unilateral decision, right? It is eros, erotic is this life source. And the way you bring life source into a marriage is through choosing, through deliberateness. It lives on the edge of our capacity to love. And so if you want to infuse a relationship, the thing that kills eros is resentment, refusal to grow. The thing that sparks it and then rejuvenates is growth and stepping in more deliberately and bringing our better selves, being able to cherish the beauty that's already there in the other person and in the relationship. So the way to find out what the relationship's capable of is to push yourself up against the question of, can I choose this person? Can I stop resenting what the marriage has never been and imagining this life where I could have had something else and instead love this person? I mean, in all the resentful marriages that I have seen, there's this core kernel of anger about, you didn't love me. I wanted to be loved. Now, the challenge is that we want to be loved and then we manage our disappointment when we're not being loved by not loving. Okay. And so it becomes self-fulfilling very, very quickly in marriage because our sense of self is walking around on the other person and they're not handling it the way we want. And so we quickly move into either building a wall or punishing in return or disinvesting or whatever. And so if we're going to see what a marriage is capable of or a friendship's capable of, we've got to bring our stronger, more vulnerable self. Why vulnerable? I mean to stick our neck out, extend ourselves towards the other person, start to actually care about them, not as a reflection of you, but as another person in their own right. And you then could find out what the marriage is capable of. You can find out if there actually was a spark that you've forgotten about. And even if there is no spark, okay, even if this is like, look, we were just platonic friends from the get-go, and it's never going to be something that's got a lot of heat or a lot of energy. Well, at least if you're not prepared to leave a marriage, right, at least you can have a good friendship. At least you can respect the way that you are in the marriage. At least you can uh, live it out in a way that is worthy. If if the alternative is not an alternative for you. Okay, Christy.
Okay. This person wants to communicate with you by chat, which we'll try. If it's not working well, they're willing to unmute if we can't do it by chat. But they say, my wife and I have had intimacy problems that have existed for decades. I love her and want to stay with her. The difficulty is she often defaults to saying, you wish you were married to someone else, which not only isn't true, but leaves me consoling her worries, and therein lies where resentment builds from. Any advice on owning my place, but owning my desires for more intimacy and also expressing desire for developing intimacy? I often feel very alone.
Okay, so but this person doesn't want to unmute, right? To do a role play.
They'll text to me, or if it is going to work better, they will unmute.
Do you want to role play, Christy? I know how you love role play.
Oh, I do. I do want to role play, but I just want
Yeah,
them
no.
to tell me what to say.
I want you to role play. He can maybe help you know what to say.
Okay.
Let's see. So can you role play, Christy, a spouse that goes into the safety of self denial or sort of self loathing?
Oh, yeah. I could channel that, sure.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just speak to it first for a second. Like, okay. Can you give me the question one more time so I can just make sure I've got it in my head the right way?
My wife and I have had intimacy problems that have existed for decades. I love her and want to be and stay with her. The difficulty is she often defaults to saying, you wish you were married to someone else, which not only isn't true, but leaves me consoling her worries, and therein lies where resentment builds from. Any advice on owning my place, but owning my desires for more intimacy and also expressing desire for developing intimacy? I often feel very alone.
Well, first of all, I would say stop consoling her anxieties. It's not your job, and it puts you in a caretaker position, which is different than an intimate relationship. And if it were going to work, it would have worked, 20 years ago. So it's not a loving thing to do to be reassuring her. It may be loving to self-reveal, okay, how you feel about her, but that's different than reassuring her. Reassuring her is I'm trying to get you to feel okay about yourself, which isn't your job. And as long as the two of you make it your job, this is never going to go anywhere. So, Christy, maybe I can just try and have a conversation with you about what you might imagine. I just believe you have it in you, Christy, honestly, as an actress in embryo.
Uh-huh.
To imagine, just if you can just like maybe channel being a spouse who's uninterested in sexual intimacy, in part because you feel bad about yourself, and you kind of use the idea you don't really love me as a way to get away from your own, either revealing deeper truths about the marriage or confronting your own fear of being knowable. So do you think
Okay.
you could channel that kind of a
Oh,
person?
yes, I do.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going to be the husband. I have been in some ways so unhappy in our marriage because I've wanted a kind of relationship that we've just never been able to create. And maybe I'd start that a little differently. Like, I've had there's been so much good in our marriage, but there has been this source of aloneness for me that's been really painful for me because we've never been the kind of partnership that I always have wanted to have with you.
Um, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what I can do any better. Maybe you should just find someone else. Maybe we'd both be happier if you found somebody else.
Do you think you would be happier?
I wouldn't be happier, but I think you would be happier.
I think what you're saying is that you don't want it to be any different than what it is.
I mean, I'd like to feel more connected too. I don't know what I can do any differently or any better. What can I do?
I'm just thinking about what you're saying. So, what can you do? I mean, I think right now you're sort of making it a question of me telling you what to do rather than maybe talking to me more honestly about who you are in this and what you want or don't want.
I just want you to be happy.
I don't think so. I think you want me to be happy with you.
Yeah, that's true.
I
I
don't
do.
know that you want me to be happy because I think you've known that I want more connection with you and you've been okay with not stepping towards me. And I'm not trying to say that I'm not the problem, maybe even most of the problem. I really don't know. I'm just saying I don't think it's true that you've just wanted me to be happy.
So what would it look like if I just wanted you to be happy? What would I do?
I just don't think that's wait, you want me to tell you what you would do if I just well, what I would say is you would choose me, you would love me, you would want to be close to me, and I think instead you want me to forgive you for not wanting that or to reassure you that it's okay that you don't want that. Because so often in our conversations, you turn the fact that I want it to be more into the idea that I don't want you, which
Well,
then I'm reassuring you that I want you.
I mean, I just know that I'm not the kind of partner that you want me to be.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say right now. Yes.
I want to be I want to be better, but I'm just not sure how to move forward, and I guess you can't answer that for me.
Well, I'm gonna call you Kathy. Christian. What am I Christy. Kathy. I I want you to choose me. I want you to want a sexual relationship with me. That's what I'm trying to say. I want.
I want a sexual relationship with you, but I just don't I just it's for some reason it's so hard to want that.
Can you say why? What's so undesirable about it?
It just I like how things are. I like being your friend. It's just I don't, if I'm being honest, I just don't feel I just don't sex isn't a place I really want to go that often with you or ever. It's overwhelming.
Do you mind saying what's overwhelming about it?
It just feel like I have a hard time drowning out the voices in my head, and there's just a lot of conflicting emotions going on, and it's just a lot of mental noise, I guess. It just doesn't feel very connecting. It just feels really stressful.
And do you mind telling me like what kinds of stressful ideas are in your head? Because I very well may have something to do with those stressful ideas.
I think it's just a self-critique of me wishing I authentically wanted it more, me knowing I should want it more, me I feel like I'm faking it and going through the motions, and I know you can probably feel that too, but I figure faking it, trying to do it is better than not, but maybe that's not true.
I just think if I really choose you and I really love you, which I want to do because I don't want to ask for something that's different than what I'm willing to give, then I don't think it's about you trying to produce something that's artificial. I think it's about understanding like what's happening for you. Not because I'm going to be here to reassure you and make it all right, but like if I could understand it with you, then maybe I could at least figure out if I have something to do with that sense of overwhelm. But I'm sure I do have something to do with it.
So you're saying it would be better to tell you what's going on in my mind and in my head than to just try and keep it keep it in my mind and get through the motions. It would be better to sit.
Yeah.
Just feels like
I
that would.
mean, I think you and I have spent a lot of time pretending with each other, and I think you've been trying to pretend on some level. So I'm not distressed that you want to be there sexually or just get through it. But I can feel all that, I mean, on some level, I know you're just placating um and that's part of the feeling of being alone, right, with you is that you're not really there. But I don't think that that means you now need to fake better. I think it's can I can we understand it together? Can I learn something about you from it? Can I understand myself in it? Because I think there's something to be dealt with if we're gonna have a real connection. I think my vulnerabilities, I'm always rushing in and trying to reassure you so that you'll want me. I'm always trying to solve your anxieties so that you'll want me, which is different than knowing you and you figuring out what you want.
Yeah, it's a little terrifying to think about you knowing me because I'm not sure I like myself or how I am about this either. So I guess it's scary to put it all out there. But maybe not as scary as pretending it's not there.
Yeah, good. And we can stop because I know we're at time. But I would say for any honest husband in this, it's also scary to hear what, for both people, for it to actually get more intimate because the feeling of being overwhelmed, I mean, he's reassuring as a way of trying to get her to feel the way that would make her want to have sex or feel that he's a good guy. But if she were to start to speak more honestly, both she would be having to take more responsibility, which I think she would prefer to resist, but also for him to take more responsibility and to see himself and the ways that he's probably a part of that feeling of overwhelm. So, or the question that she carries that might be legitimate of how much do you actually love me? I mean, I don't know because I don't know the specifics of this particular questioner's relationship, but there's probably hard things for both people that colluding in a reassurance frame allows them to each avoid. Okay, everybody, thanks so much, and I'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Oh, wait, should I remind people? Christy, should we go through the code again?
Yeah, let's remind people.
I'm so bad at that part. You do it
Someone
this
in the
time.
chat said I deserve an Oscar. Thank you. This was an unexpected part of my job. Yes, so do you want to go ahead and do your
So yeah, so we're doing, what is it, just live. If you use live, you get $100 off any of the live events that we have. We have 2 couples retreats in October, and meaning the strengthening your relationship retreat, and then followed by the enhancing sexual intimacy retreat. And Chrissy can link to those details. And then the art of loving retreat, which is the men's retreat in Southern Utah in November. So these are wonderful opportunities to really address your relationship, really hear the principles, go through the questions, interact with me. So I'm doing role plays in these retreats, working with couples around real issues. If at the men's retreat, I'll do these kinds of role plays where I'm being you and you're being your spouse to better see yourself and better see how to collaborate around difficult issues. So I highly recommend it. It's very personalized. So that is to say, it's the same content, the backbone of the content, but it really is shaped by who's in front of me and what the needs are of the group. So anyway, hope to see
Jennifer, I
some of
think
you
something
there.
worth saying, a couple that came on a Europe trip, they talked with you just for like 5 or 10 minutes and it just changed everything for them. So I think it's just worth emphasizing how impactful it can be to ask one question at these retreats, to get up and do the role play with you. Like, these are
Yeah.
couples who have been through lots of coaching, lots of read lots of books, listened to a lot of podcasts, but like
Yeah.
even the amount of interaction you can get at a retreat can change everything. I watch it happen every single time, and I have a
Right.
hard
Our
time
blind
putting it into
spots.
words, but it's the couples that come, no matter where they're at, you come away with so much.
Yeah, our blind spots are indeed our blind spots. And sometimes having somebody just shine a light, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that hurts to see that. But now I can do something differently. And that can really be helpful to people.
And it's so much the attitude you come in also, because when I think of this person on the retreat, they could have easily just, you know, put up their wall like, well, she understands everyone, but not me.
Yeah.
But just the open heart of like, show me how I can do better. If you
Yep.
come with that attitude, you'll
Yep.
you'll change your life and you'll change your marriage in a couple of days in a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yep.
So
Yep.
anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, love these events. They're my favorite. Love the people that come to them. And so anyway, hope to see some of you in October or November. So
Right, and you can save $100 off of any of those with the code LIVE. And if you have any questions about the events, shoot me an email, office@finlayson-fife.com. Someone was asking about where they suggest topics for the future Q&As. You can email me those as well. Just always open for suggestions and how we can do things that are more interesting and helpful to you. We have Jennifer's just finishing up work on her book, and I have the feeling after that we're going to be
yeah,
tackling
rolling
lots
out
of
some new
new and
things.
exciting things. So
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you
Exactly.
so much for being here, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. Talk to you soon.